Hello, I'm Sweat Slime, and this isn't what I like to do around here. I don't like to return to topics I've already covered. Even if I feel like the production value of the video is bad, even if I feel like I overstated my case and I could probably argue it better now, even when it's both. When last I discussed milkshakes, I thought I was late to the party. I thought this would be one of those silly little controversies that everybody talks about for a couple days, and then everybody kind of collectively realizes wasn't really worth their time and forgets about it, and then a couple years later we're like, hey, remember how we were all mad about milkshakes for a little while? That was crazy. And I thought by the time I got to it, that process had played out, and I was wasting my time. But it turns out the milkshake controversy was just getting started. Things have gotten significantly more hysterical since then, and I mean that in both senses of the word. But let's back up and explain what we're talking about to anyone who's unfamiliar. Antifa activists have been throwing milkshakes at far-right garbage fuckers. The garbage fuckers and the people who insist that they themselves are not garbage fuckers, but for some reason are very concerned about the reputation of garbage fuckers, insist that this is assault, which, legally speaking, it is, but come on, man. Really? And just when it seemed like milkshake-based mass hysteria was dying down, on June 29th, at a rally held in Portland, Oregon by the fascist street gang The Proud Boys, a journalist from Quillette named Andy Go received a milkshake straight in the dome piece. The milkshake may or may not have contained cement, and by may or may not, I mean definitely did not. We'll get to that later. But he was punched and kicked so badly that he was hospitalized with a brain hemorrhage. And then he was out of the hospital within 24 hours giving interviews, like one does when they definitely absolutely have a brain hemorrhage. Now, Thought Slime, that sounds sarcastic. Are you accusing Andy No of exaggerating his condition? What could he possibly stand to gain from that? And no, obviously not. I'm not saying Andy No is exaggerating. That would be very irresponsible of me to say without getting all of the facts. What I'm saying is that it sure looks like he is. It does seem that way, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not a doctor, but it doesn't seem likely to me that someone could have a brain hemorrhage and then get out of the hospital and give interviews to Fox News within 24 hours. That doesn't seem credible, but it would be journalistically irresponsible to suggest that this is an exaggeration. I mean, you can see him getting attacked on video. You can't deny that it was a violent attack. I mean, to suggest that he's lying about his condition, you'd have to be the type of person who claims people are lying based on nothing but idle speculation. Now, if it were up to me, I would just believe people when they say they have injuries. But if I did that, I wouldn't be living up to Andy No's journalistic standards. Take, for example, the time he claimed a woman whose vertebrae was snapped by the Proud Boys was lying. Because, nothing. Because he heard some people laugh? What? By the way, he also named her in the tweets about this subject so that she could be identified by the fascist thugs who had already snapped her vertebrae in front of him. Cool dude. Hey, don't you think it's pretty weird that one guy got punched by Antifa and made $186,000 in a week for his trouble, but the relief fund for the victims and families affected by the Nazi Unite the Right rally, where 3 people died and 30 more were injured, has made less than that in 22 months? Don't you think that's cool? Doesn't it make you kind of sick to your stomach a little bit? Don't you despair at the state of the world when you hear something like that? It's almost like to me, it seems like dishonest media frenzies over the dangers of Antifa make people more sympathetic to fascists and their sympathizers than the victims and the people taking a stand against them. There's a certain narrative surrounding these events, that No's attacks were part of a larger clash between Antifa and just journalists in general. That this was about silencing investigation. Andy No was just peacefully walking around, minding his own business, doing his job as a real big boy journalist, when Antifa monster men viciously assaulted him with milk and chemical agents, silly string, and punched and kicked him. Clearly, these maniacs are out of control. What's left out of that version of events is that there were other journalists covering the protest that day who didn't get attacked or milkshaked. No wasn't attacked because he was a journalist. He was attacked because he has a history of doxing anti-fascist activists and exposing them to retaliation from fascists. Like the time he stoked fears of Antifa media collusion based on a bogus article written by his racist pal, Eoin Lenahan. Who named this guy? Tolkien? This was on Quillette, the website that Neo works for. And the journalists in this article were later put up on a hit list by the neo-Nazi terrorist group Atomwaffen. So it isn't exactly unreasonable that the anti-fascist protesters deemed his presence to be a safety risk, because his whole thing is showing up to anti-fascist actions and trying to dox people who then become the targets of the type of fascist thugs they're there trying to stop. A lot of right-wingers complain that Antifa activists sometimes wear masks. But they don't do that because they're, ashamed of their actions. They do that because if they didn't, their identity would be public and fascists could just murder them. I would think, after 8 fucking Spider-Man movies, people would get that. Want to see what happens when they get outed? Take a look at this Twitter thread from an activist detailing how almost a dozen Proud Boys, some of whom were wearing body armor, showed up at her house to threaten her. That happened the same day as the protest where Noah was attacked. And if I didn't follow a bunch of anti-fascist activists on Twitter, I never would have heard about it. It certainly wasn't headline news on Vox or CNN. Now, if you hate violence, as I do, what is the appropriate response to someone showing up at your political action with the clear intention of exposing your comrades to dangerous and violent intimidation from fascist street thugs? Is it non-violent to just let them do that? If we're so willing to condemn a punch to the head directed towards a fascist agitator, then surely we can spare a condemnation for the violence he is seeking to provoke. To flatten this narrative and present No being attacked as random violence is willfully dishonest. Busted, thought Slime. You think Andy No is a fascist? Ha! You loony lefties will call anyone a fascist. He's Asian and gay. You can't be a gay Asian fascist for some reason. Even if in your professional career you perpetuate race science conducted by random anti-Semitic fraudsters. Here's your first clue that someone might be a fascist, or at the very least a fascist sympathizer. If they show up at a far-right rally, to keep an eye on the anti-fascist activists, to collect information on them that they might later use to tattle on them to fascists, that ought to be a red flag. A red flag with a swastika in the middle. Now, if you buy into the media hype about Antifa, you might think we ought to keep an eye on them. Maybe they're more dangerous than these Proud Boys and other far-right extremists. But if you actually take a cool-headed look at the numbers, that's not the case. Did you know that Antifa are responsible for very few of the political violence-related deaths in the United States in 2018? Less than 5%. The mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it because I made it up. In reality, Antifa are responsible for 0 deaths in 2018. The far right, however, are responsible for literally 100% of the extremist murders in the United States in 2018. Now, if some part of you reacted with disgust to me saying Antifa was only responsible for 5% of these murders, then where is that anger for the 100% that was actually committed by the far right? Anyone who takes an honest look over the landscape of political violence and concludes that the biggest threat to their safety is Antifa is either a fascist themselves or more concerned with minor violence against fascists than with fascist murders. I would call that a distinction without a difference. Does that mean Andy deserved to get punched? I couldn't tell you. I don't really care what people deserve. That's between them and their God. Does that mean that it was a good decision tactically to punch him? Once again, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly a propaganda win for the Proud Boys, but at the same time, I'm not so sure I'd be willing to allow my comrades to come to harm just to keep my enemies from making good propaganda. Either way, I think it's a little rich for anyone to criticize these decisions from the relative safety of the sidelines. Unless you were there, putting your butt on the line to protect people from the hipster Nazi crew, it may be difficult to see how stressful and dangerous the situation was. Anyone can make a perfect tactical choice given a few days to think about it, and the benefit of hindsight. It's significantly more difficult to make these game time calls when a couple dozen dickheads in body armor are chanting about throwing you out of a helicopter. Let me put it this way. Whether or not I always agree with the decisions they make, I support our troops. But Dot Slime, you're so angry. Why are you so angry all the time? Why'd you get angry? You just mad? I thought this was going to be funny. I thought you were the jokester with your goofs and gaffs. Can't you find anything hilarious about this bloody street fight? Good news. I sure can. While the rumors and milkshakes were flying on June 29th, the Portland police put out a little tweet about a random tip they received.
Police have received information that some of the milkshakes thrown today during the demonstration contained quick-drying cement. We are encouraging anyone hit with a substance today to report it to police.
The tweet seems to play into the hands of far-right provocateurs who have been trying to present a resistance to their activities as more dangerous than they are. In a normal situation, it would be a poorly worded and hyperbolic tweet, but given the context, when there's a history of aggressive action by police against those resisting the far right coming into Portland, it seems to suggest that there's a continuing problem. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, of course I'd say that. I'm biased against the police as a big lefty anarchist boy. Of course I'm going to say that, except I didn't say it. Michael German, a former FBI agent and law professor, said it to a local newspaper in Oregon. I mean, I read it aloud, but I didn't. He wrote it. He's the one who said it. You get it. Hey, also, did you know that sugar breaks down cement and stops it from solidifying? Sugar, like the kind in a milkshake? Yeah, okay, bud, but they're not going to put the sugar in. They're just going to use quick-dry cement and water. They're not actually going to make a milkshake. Except, oops, wouldn't you know it, according to Portland police, they use soy milk. And let me just check. I'm going to go in my fridge. I'm going to grab some soy milk. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Yup, that's got 5 grams of sugar per serving. You know, if you're going to make up lies about leftists, try not to include soy milk in the lies, because that's something we're going to disprove real quick. It's something we're kind of experts on. Okay, well, it's a very obvious hoax. But how were the police supposed to know that? It's not like people were drinking the milkshakes, except, of course they were. They're milkshakes, according to several eyewitnesses. Plenty of people were drinking these alleged cement-filled milkshakes. But let's not let the fact that it's an obvious lie and also impossible get in the way of our fear-mongering. Right, Ted Cruz? Right, Ian Miles Cheong? Right, Jack Proboscis? And perhaps my favorite, one that I really thought would have been deleted by now, but shockingly, I just checked and it's still up. Paul Joseph Watson retweeted this. And it's a guy pouring into a milkshake cup and it's got a blurry warning label. And the guy's like, if it's milkshakes, how come there's a warning label saying not to touch the substance inside the bucket? But then if you look at the warning label, it very clearly is saying don't let babies around the bucket because they could fall in and drown. Not, as this person suggests, a warning label about touching the stuff in the bucket. So this is one of those, what do you call them? There's a word for this. Easily provable lie. This is a very clear falsification that you made up based on nothing. But I get that it seems hard to disprove, Paul, because you'd have to look closely at the photograph you were posting. But you know what, Paul? Let's forget about the lies you told about the milkshakes. Seems like small potatoes at this point. A man was clubbed in the head with a crowbar. That's no laughing matter, you know. I'm at a loss for words. Here I was, laughing at this situation, and look what happened. There's nothing funny about this. Well, actually, there's one thing that's kind of funny about it, which is that this guy started a fight that he couldn't win, and was given several chances to disengage, and chose to keep fighting and assaulting people with his baton, and then he got his ass beat, and now he's very sad about it. So that's kind of funny, you know, when you think about it that way. See, the thing is, Paul, jokes are kind of in the telling. Like, the way I told it is funnier than the way you lied by omission. You know what? Maybe that's unfair to say it's a live omission. It's also possible you didn't know that. And that seems very likely to me, because you're a bad journalist and bad at your job. And look, it's easy to laugh at the dim bulbs who are suckered by these obvious lies. Watch! Paul, you're so incredibly bad at what you do. See? It's easy. But there's a reason that these obvious lies get pushed in front of everyone's faces. There's a reason everyone from Ted Cruz to CNN was fooled into talking about cement milkshakes as though it was anything more than a hateful fantasy cooked up by lying Nazi assholes. Because if you push the narrative that anti-fascists are violent thugs hard enough, that encourages people to sympathize with fascists. Right now, fascists are in the streets murdering innocent people. They're shooting up mosques and synagogues. They're putting children in concentration camps. Stop making it easier for them by uncritically parroting right-wing talking points. Put yourself in the shoes of the people on the front lines of this fight. Not the police, not politicians, not the media. I'm talking about the people putting their bodies on the line to keep your community safe from fascist scumbags who want to intimidate their opposition so they can run roughshod over minorities. And if they lie hard enough, they can convince people to kill their opponents on sight. Plenty of people responded to this garbage by saying exactly that. The thing is, there is no moral equivocation between fascists and the people fighting tooth and nail to prevent fascists from gaining any more power. If the fascists get their way, they won't distinguish between the people who were civil with them and the people who weren't. So please, don't play by their rules. Don't equivocate between fascists and anti-fascists. Listen, the rest of the video is for Antifa only. If you're not Antifa, stop watching. Okay, here's my recipe for a milkshake that you can use. Soy milk, coconut ice cream, uranium, a knife, an actual wolf, a drop of blood infected with the rage virus from 28 days later, a ghost, some fresh organic strawberries, and other ingredients that are also very dangerous. Hey, thanks for watching my video. I made it for you, and I hope you liked it. If you did, why not press the like button and also the subscribe button? That would help me out a lot. And you know what else would help me out a lot? Is if you went on over to patreon.com/thoughtslime, kicked me a couple bucks. You don't have to, though. Only do it if you can. I hope the air conditioner noise wasn't too bad. I'm still very sweaty, but not nearly as sweaty as I was last time. And I'm not gonna turn it off because, oh boy, do I need it. Oh boy, is it hot in here. Oh boy. I'm still working on the June Patreon rewards. I would love to tell you that that's because I got delayed by a good reason, but I didn't. It's because of Super Mario Maker 2. So if you became a $10 patron or more in June and you haven't yet sent me a brief description of what you want drawn or some reference photos of what you want drawn, please do so. ThoughtSlimeEditor, all one word, @gmail.com. Have a great day, and these are our streets.